Hello, and welcome to Startup Stories with Scaleway, where we explore cutting-edge startups around the world and how they leverage cloud computing technologies. I'm your host, Ethan Pierce, and today's guest is Cedric Millionaire, CTO of Nunki, an AI-powered crisis management platform that identifies risks and threats through social media and online content. Welcome, Cedric.
Hi.
It's great to have you here, and I see Station F in the background here in Paris. That's great. To give our audience some context, I always like to start with kind of the brief elevator pitch or discussion. Just, how would you explain in a sentence or two or three what Nunki does so that people, as we talk about the rest of our discussion, people will have a very good idea about what it is the service you provide.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ethan. Thank you for being here. So what Nunki does, as you said, it's an AI-powered risk and threat management platform. So what we do is we listen to everything that is happening on the web, so on social media, on newspaper websites, on blog posts. Then we analyze all this data through our own artificial intelligence, which is heavily based on NLP. So NLP is natural language processing. So we reading the text and trying to understanding the text of social media posts, of blog posts, and so on. And once we have all this data, we are extracting as much information as possible to know what is happening around the world. So, for example, when there's an earthquake happening, the first information will often be could be a social media post. Once we have the social media post in our data pipe, we then push the information to our client that an earthquake is happening at this location. And this is super important for our clients because they are often multinational businesses or government institution that needs to know at the first moment what happens around the world.
So I'm always interested in the backstory of how things like this come to be, what it was that caused the founders to think that this was a problem they wanted to solve, and they didn't tackle that and to take that out there as a service. So I know that you've been in with the company for about a year now, but the company's a little bit older than that. But I wonder just what was the story that took the founders towards wanting to solve this problem?
Yeah, so the company is actually 7 years old now, and the original founder, which is my associate now, my partner, was studying in Turkey, and there were a lot of riots going on, but the French press and the international press wasn't talking about it at all. But it was a huge thing in Turkey and was very important politically because, as you know, those riots were the beginning of the coup that later happened. But all the information was on social media. And as he was scrolling through social media and analyzing it, he saw that there was a real information source on social media compared to traditional media. So the basic idea was to create a new media which is based on social media. So basically to create targeted at very young people, to create a media where all the information doesn't come from journalists, but only from social media posts, and all of this powered through AI. So they reached a good number of, so they built an app to do that, and they reached like a small community of people, like more than 10K people on the app, but they had trouble scaling, and they saw that the technology that they were building could be way more interesting in a B2B perspective. And that actually big companies were far more interested in such a technology and knowing what's happening at what place than actually people on their phones, like 18 to 25-year-old people. And so the first thing that they did is that they tried to build a marketing tool for clients to know what is happening around their retail businesses. So, for example, you're manager of a Carrefour, and you have a Carrefour somewhere, and then you want to know what people are thinking about some products. You want to know if something related to security is happening. Is there a riot taking place nearby that you need to be aware of? And in this way, the product slowly migrated to a more security and safety aspect. And 2 years ago, or 2 to 3 years ago, they decided to only go forward with this risk and safety business. And then I joined the venture last summer. and integrated the team. And now we are completely focused on this risk and threat detection management platform.
No, it's super interesting to think about all those signals because historically, I remember seeing something a few years ago that it would take the AFP or the Associated Press approximately 10 to 15 minutes to announce kind of an important news story over the wire. And now, depending on sources, whether it's a weather event or terrorism or a plane or whatever it might happen to be that is something that people see happening, it takes between 10 and 30 seconds for the first tweet to go out on any kind of big news item. So it's obvious that even if these news organizations, want to participate as fast as possible in the news cycle, that social media is getting there faster. And now you even see it with them, where often these large news organizations will tweet about news before they have the article finished, just so that they can say, okay, we're announcing that there's a thing, and here's what we know, article is coming. Because it's that race now to be the first one or be very quick to talk about news items. So the speed with which those signals are now coming in is really impressive, and being able to weed through those and provide actionable data is fascinating. So I'd like to maybe understand a little bit more about the technology that you're using, that you're leveraging to dig through what is an enormous pipe of info in order to be able to really target the words or subjects that are important to a specific business, so that you can then provide them with that alert and risk management profile that you're creating as a service.
Yeah, definitely. So our business is based on three parts. We have the data gathering part, where we're trying to collect as much data as fast and as possible. Then we have the mm, event detection, weak signals detection, however you want to call it, which is based on AI. And then we have the last part, which is visualization of the data for the client. So how is the client going to perceive the data? So I'm quickly going to talk about those three and focusing on the event detection part. So on the data gathering part, we are scraping all the web, everything that is freely available on the internet. We're gathering information. We are heavily based on blog posts, newspaper articles, because even if newspaper articles are often happening after social media posts, they are still very interesting, because some very local newspapers have information that you sometimes either miss on social media, or that is not available on social media. So local newspapers are very important to us. And then we are plugged to some social media APIs that helps us gather some information. Once we have all this information, the first thing to do is to denoise this information, because there's more than 10 million signals per minute, and therefore you need to denoise it. So we have some rather, and this step is very focused on speed. So now we're on the event detection part already, and here on the denoising step, you need to have an algorithm that is very focused on speed, to trying to go as fast as possible, because handling 10 million messages a second is very, very difficult. So once we have denoised this, we are trying to leverage AI to get information from each signal. So what we are trying to do is understand what the topic of the text is, about who or what it is talking about, and where it's taking place. So for those who know a bit about NLP, first we do some classification to know, okay, is this text talking about a terrorist attack? Or is this text actually talking about an earthquake? Or is this earthquake talking about an Ebola problem in Africa? So once we know what it is talking about, we still need to know where it's taking place. So how we do that is that there's something called named entities. So named entities are persons, organizations, locations, and so on, that you can detect in a text. And for example, if there's the phrase, there's a terrorist attack going on in Paris, Paris will be a named entity, and we can detect this entity. And once we have this entity, we need to know, okay, it's Paris that is located in, probably Paris that is located in France, and not the Paris that is located in Texas, because there's a Paris located in Texas, United States. So there's a whole process of knowing of which Paris we are talking about. And once we have done this, we have Paris in France, and we can extract the location entities, location coordinates, sorry, and now pinpoint the event. Okay, we know it's a terrorist attack. We know it's taking place in Paris. And so we can push this information to all the clients who are interested in having the information about terrorist attacks in Paris. So all our clients, French clients that say, okay, I want to know everything that is happening in France, will get this information. So how we do that is we either provide an API for our clients where we automatically plug the events with an alert system, or we have our own dashboard where the clients where the clients can visualize all the data that we are pushing, all the events that we are pushing. What is very important to know in our technology is that once an event is taking place, we will not push an alert for every tweet that we detect that is related to this event. So, for example, if there's an earthquake going on in Japan, like a few months ago, there will be over 1,000 social media posts that are related to this event. And we will not push an alert for all social media posts, but what we are going to do is that we are going to see through our AI, because it's located at the same place, because the text is very similar, and a few other things that we have internally, that these tweets are talking about the same events. And so we will gather all this information, trying to extract as much info as possible, but only push the event one time to our client.
So that's fascinating to see these three pieces of how you're identifying and classing and pushing back out this information. I'm wondering then, for people who are looking at this kind of a service, how does Nunki distinguish itself from potential competitors? What is it that you do differently, or that you do better? What is kind of the value add that you have built into this detection and monitoring platform?
Yeah, I think one of our main advantages is that we work very, very closely with our clients, and that we are consistently improving our AI models to the needs of our clients. We always we have some basic offer where you can you can buy all of these categories for all of those places, like, oh, I want to know everything that is related to terrorism and which is happening in Syria. And then, okay, you can buy that and you have that, and this is our basic offer. But what we also do is that we work closely with our client, doing some workshop to target their specific needs, and then through a phase of active learning where the client is saying, okay, I didn't want to get notified about this event, or say, okay, this event is super important, please mark it as super high intensity, and consistently working closely with our clients to improve the models. And that's, I think, our main advantage, because we built some very specific models for our clients, which with whom they're super satisfied.
So from the competitor perspective, we see that now. From a if somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, well, that would actually be really great from a business insight perspective to have some actionable intelligence around a specific topic, because that can affect potentially the things that I invest into, or my company works in a certain space, so I need to know all the things that could impact that demographic, or that region geographically, or whatever. So if somebody is having kind of those thoughts, what would you how would you identify the perfect client, in the sense of somebody who would really get a lot of value out of your service? If somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, hey, that's kind of interesting, what are the companies? Because very often companies don't realize how adapted they are to services that are available. And so sometimes it's the company that's like, well, actually, you would be a great client. You would be the kind of person who would get a lot of value out of this. Who would you recommend would get the most value out of a service like Nunki?
All the clients that are currently visiting websites on a daily basis to check if something has happened, that are currently working on TweetDeck to get some information about some specific product, and that have 1,000 analysts going through all this social media, all the local press, all the stuff, which is a very old way of doing this stuff. And what we're trying to achieve is, through AI and through cloud computing, to go through so much data that it wouldn't be able to handle it on as a human. And therefore, like clients that have very specific problems identified, like, okay, I need to know what is going around in this subject at this place, and that are doing it in an old school way are the perfect clients for us, because then we will give them more information that they already have, way faster. And for us it's very good because they know exactly what they want, and so for us to build an AI model that suits their needs is easier this way.
Well, it's fascinating, and obviously, when you talk about all of this data that you are gathering, all the signals that you are observing, in order to be able to kind of collect all of this, and then obviously there's the processing of that, and you mentioned the AI engine behind this, and all these different things. So we're talking about lots of cloud computing resources, and so this is startup stories with Scaleway. So obviously, that is, near and dear to our discussion today is leveraging cloud computing infrastructure and the partnership between Nunki and the startup program at Scaleway. So I guess I'm just very curious to kind of, as you look at your infrastructure needs in cloud computing, and as you mentioned, you've gone through several business models, but now you're very much focused on scaling up this risk management platform. As you look forward into the needs and the tools that this platform requires in order to do what you do, as you scale those up, what does that look like from an infrastructure perspective, and why is it so important to have this partnership with Scaleway?
Okay, first of all, on the technological side, everything there's we do a lot of stuff. Like we have a lot of AI models, we have a lot of scrapers, we have a lot of APIs, we have our own database, and they all need to communicate with one another. And so the Scaleway Kubernetes Capsule product was perfectly suited for our needs to manage all this data and manage, like, Scaleway is a Kubernetes certified building, like allowing us to build a very good Kubernetes model on Scaleway. And the second point for us is that Scalewell is actually having their servers in France and Europe, and is an European company, which is very good for our clients, that we are not depending on some AWS or some Google Cloud platform, which are inherently American, and where the data of our European, for the moment, client is going through their servers. So this was actually something we needed to do for specific clients too.
I think the privacy by design is definitely something that attracts people to these European cloud providers, and is a very important subject to bring up. Some of the other companies, have potentially tried to offer European versions of that, but I find it a recurring theme with startups that are choosing, for example, Scaleway, that European data sovereignty is extremely important in their decision process, because it's extremely important to their clients. Well, thank you for this. I'm now I really understand exactly what you guys are doing, and it's fascinating, because this is such a, I can think back to RSS feeds and Google Reader before they killed it off, and that was a huge research tool to be able to keep an eye on lots of content that was out there. Now with TweetDeck, you mentioned that, which is definitely one of the tools in the toolbox for being able to watch lots of stuff. But if people are time sensitive and need to not have to filter that on their own and have somebody actually present them, here's the things you wanted to be notified about, and we're doing it. It's super interesting what you've built. For me, the last question then just is really what's next. What's coming for Nunki? What do you want to see happen over the next 6 months, the next year, as you build out your tools and really the services that you want to provide?
On So in the next 6 months, we have a phase where we actually finished a lot of our R&D, and we are currently having a very good product. So in the next 6 months, it will be to scale the number of clients, because we spend a lot of time researching, trying different things out, and we're currently finalizing it. So we will capitalize on. We made a huge technological gap past 6 months. Like we went from two supported languages to over 100 supported languages in all
Wow.
sectors, and we currently, treat almost all possible language, like the 100 most spoken on Wikipedia. And so now that we have this increased capacity to handle more data, we're going to target way more clients, way more prospects to scale as a business. And once this is done, we want maybe to go into a real seed funding and trying to grow as a company.
Well, that's super interesting and exciting, and I wish you all the best as you build that out over the next months. That's fantastic about the languages to be able to do to be able to research in that many different languages to find these signals. Thank you for this discussion. It's been super interesting, and I've learned a bunch, Cedric. And I wish you all of the best as you scale up Nunki.
Thank you very much, Ethan.
And thank you for joining us for this episode of Startup Stories with Scaleway. If you are a startup that uses cloud computing resources, be sure to check out Scaleway's startup program at scaleway.com. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or your preferred podcast platform, and check out all of the previous episodes of the podcast. Again, thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.